Performance monitoring. Now in this section we're going to talk about the tools that are available to you for monitoring the performance of RtWebParts. The overall performance will be basically the baseline for performance will be established by the performance of each of the individual components. And we do have an interface called the Pi Performance Monitor interface that will allow you to actually archive that performance monitor data for the different components. And we'll take a look at that in just a minute. Now in addition, you can use the performance monitor in Windows if you don't have our performance monitor interface or if you don't want to bother to archive the data. And if you were really interested in good tuning of your system, we have a full package called IT Monitor for monitoring the IT resources around your organization, and that gives you even more flexibility, more reporting capability, etc. So what I'd like to do is describe primarily in this section, primarily describe the part right here, Performance Monitor in Windows. You'll notice the slides that we're going to be looking at are all about the Windows Performance Monitor. Now as an extra feature here, or bonus, what I'd like to do is also, at the end of this series, it's not in the lecture notes, but I'd like to demonstrate using that Performance Monitor interface. We include this here, well, basically so that those of you who are familiar with Performance Monitor know that it's available, that RtWebParts components are available as well. But yeah, let's take a look at that when we finish up our discussion of the Windows Performance Monitor. So by Windows Performance Monitor, what we're talking about is the application you'll find under Control Panel, Administrative Tools, Performance. That's the Windows Performance Monitors, or the Windows Performance Counters. You also hear them called Performance Counters. So let's take a look at what type of counters there are. There are hundreds of these counters available. We won't, we're not the expert when it comes to telling you which things to monitor. In fact, Microsoft's got some nice information in the Windows Server help file under monitoring performance. So if I go over to my server here, we take a look at this is the simple or the regular Windows help, in this case for Windows Server 2003. If you look under monitoring performance, you search for that, you'll find a couple of nice sections on monitoring performance. This is the one I'm thinking of right here, setting up a monitoring configuration. It's actually got some suggestions as to what things you should monitor. These are the types of things you should look at: memory usage, CPU usage, etc. These different performance counters are all described here. So without any further ado, let's take a look at how we would track these. Now this would be how to look at them using the Windows tools. I'll go into Control Panel, and this is under Administrative Tools, and we're going to look for Performance. And there's our performance. This is our performance monitor here that ships with Windows. Let me minimize this. So some of these counters are things you may be, very intuitive, you may be familiar with, percentage of the processor usage, etc. And you can add more to this just simply by clicking on this little plus symbol and going out and finding different performance metrics that you might feel like monitoring. So you can see that, the basics right here, page faulting per second, average disk quota, processor utilization. These are a good start. Of course, we recommend just looking at some of the basics that you'll find out in this Help and Support Center. As I said, that the Windows Help gives you a list of things that you can monitor. You'll find in the RtWebParts Administrator Guide a whole section that describes the custom performance counters and some of the other performance counters that we suggest you look at for monitoring the health of RtWebParts. So for example, under custom counters, we look at things like last call, USEX, and average call per seconds, that kind of thing. That's something that are specific to RtWebParts that you can add to the Windows performance counters. And then there are some other performance counters that we recommend: general Windows performance counters, SharePoint performance counters, SQL Server performance counters, etc. Here are some of the recommendations. You'll find that in the Administrator's Guide. So again, to look at one, you would go in and let's say we're going to look at average calls per seconds. and I'll go into, I'm in my performance counter. I'll click on Add, and under the performance object I'm going to be choosing RtWebParts. As you can see, these are custom for RtWebParts, and I would look for things like calls per second, average calls per second. I can simply add these. And let me add that. I'll remove a couple of the other ones so it's a little easier to see. Oops. And I'll do that by just clicking on the X button here. So let me get rid of some of these other performance counters. And now we're just looking at this calls per second. So that's how you would add the custom WebParts performance counters. And then, as I said, in addition, there may be some WebParts from the recommendations you saw in the the Windows help, or in that our System Manager's Guide, the RtWebParts Administrator's Guide, all those different references for the SQL Server and the SharePoint performance counters. So those are some of the performance counters you would like to add, and we're watching them using the Windows Performance Counter. Now, in addition to that, we can also track these long-term in Pi, and I'll show you how to do that in the next video. I'd like to demonstrate quickly how you would take this performance counter information from Windows and store it in Pi. Now, this is a feature called our Performance Monitor Interface, and everybody who buys Pi actually gets a basic copy of that interface. If you're interested in more about this, what I'd suggest you do is go to our website and look up our webinar on the Performance Monitor Interface. It's an hour worth of discussion on this. You just go to the Show Me How training webinars. Now, these are only available to people who are on our tech support. So if you have a support agreement, you should have access to it. I'll just do a quick search for the words Performance Monitor. There we go. And it should take you down to this webinar we did. There we go. This is all about using the Performance Monitor Interface. So this goes into a lot more detail. I'm going to just demonstrate it briefly right now, but if you want to see it in more detail, go off to that webinar. Probably the best resource for looking at that. So to start off, I'm going to go into Pi System Management Tools. I'm going to configure the Performance Monitor Basic Interface. Now, I did that by choosing Tools, Interface Configuration Utility. This is what we use for establishing new interfaces. So I'm going to go ahead and start up this interface, set it up as a service, etc. I'll go ahead and open up this interface. It's called the Pi Perfmon Basic Interface. Again, if I'm going too fast, sorry, but I just wanted to demonstrate this for those of you who may be familiar with configuring interfaces. This looks good so far. I'll go ahead and configure this. Make sure I save this. That's right, I haven't changed anything yet. I'll go into the section on service, and I will create this as a brand new service. We'll make this a manual service. So this is going to be a service running as a service that this is the interface that retrieves data from those performance counters. And let me go ahead and start this interface. There we go. And that looks good. So once I've got this started, then I can start gathering data by it. I'm going to go into the IT points section and go into performance counters. And you should notice something fairly familiar here. We're going to get to access that same performance counter chooser that we saw before. So let me just double check. Yeah, there's my interface. That's the Performance Monitor Basic Interface I just configured. And when I switch over to build tags, I should see a list. Yeah, there we go. Here's a list of the performance counters. And it's the same list we saw before, just presented differently. I'm going to look for processor. Here's all the Pi stuff. We should see RtWebParts in there as well. Here's processor. What we'd like to do is look at the processor time. So let me drill down through processor time. I want to look at the total processor time for both these processors. And we'll go ahead and, yeah, there we go. This has now selected that as a tag, a Pi tag, or identified that as a Pi tag that needs to be created. So when I choose Create Tags, that creates that Pi tag for me. So now this tag, it's called OSIsoft Processor. That's the name of the computer, by the way, OSIsoft. That's a tag that's now collecting data showing me processor value, the amount of CPU that's being used. Now it's going to take up to 2 minutes for this interface to pick up that new tag and start processing. So we'll go ahead and pause our video and come back in 2 minutes and look at our results in Process Book. Okay, now here's our copy of Process Book. I'll just go ahead and create a brand new display. File New. This will be a brand new display, and we're going to take a look and see if we can trend this. So here's our trend object, and we will do a tag search for the tag called OSI, and I can see there's the tag right there. Go ahead and select it. Let's change this to, let's just go with, say, 1 hour. And there we go. So now what we've got here, we close out a couple of these windows. What we've got here is a display that's showing me that we have now started historizing this performance counter, the same performance counter we saw in Windows. So that now becomes a pie trend. So again, if you're interested in more about Performance Monitor, please feel free to look at that webinar. It is an application that ships with every version of Pi, the basic version of that Performance Monitor interface. As you can see, it's a nice way to historize the performance counters that tell you the health of your system.